Mobilization community, welcome back to our podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. Let's talk about it.
Hey, let's talk about it, listeners. Cole and Kate here. We're excited to have you back again this month.
And watchers. Some of them are watching.
Yes,
just
listeners
listening.
and watchers.
Maybe you're watching because, you know.
You like YouTube. It's all about preference these days.
You like the visual of a microphone right in somebody's face. So maybe you're watching for that purpose.
We are excited, as you can tell, for this month's episode because we have the author of The Freedom Fight, Ted Shimer. Thank you so much for being with us, Ted.
Hey, it's great to be with you guys. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you know, we just love what you do, even the little bit that we've gotten to know what it is and the freedom you guys are bringing to people. So excited for people to hear about what you do. For those that are watching, listening, we're going to be talking about freedom from pornography today, getting free, staying free. What are the steps to that? You know, Ted, what you guys have built and created, just from the knowledge I have, is, I mean, it's spreading. Lots of people are getting involved. It's easily accessible. But before we get into those details, would love to just kind of hear, like, from you. Give us a bit of your story. Like, what brought you to this point? Tell us who you are. Tell our audience who you are. Love for them just to kind of get to know you quick before we dive into all the nitty gritty.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, my wife and I met during college. We were involved in a college ministry, and we went on staff with that college ministry, an evangelistic discipleship ministry. And it was about the early to mid 2000s when we started noticing that a lot of the students that we were discipling were addicted to pornography. So much so that in 2007, as a ministry, we identified pornography as the biggest obstacle to us fulfilling our mission of building spiritual leaders for Christ. And so it was really kind of at that point that, you know, I just started my deep dive into this topic, trying to learn all I could, so that in the context of discipling students, we could help them find freedom. And
that's amazing.
And so you know, I've personally been through over 20 different, you know, porn addiction recovery programs and resources, been trained as a sexual certified, you know, sex addiction therapist.
Wow.
To kind of get the clinical side of it. But really kind of through that process from 2007 to 2017, we just kind of identified, hey, what are the principles that are leading to freedom?
Yeah.
That are biblically based and gospel centered. And we took those principles and put them into the Freedom Fight, our, you know, online, you know, website and app platform to make it easily accessible to whoever wants to find freedom.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I mean, anybody that is involved with ministry, I would say probably has the same conclusion that you do. Yeah. I mean, we were in youth ministry for years before we were doing this, working with young adults, high school students. You know, and I would even say a lot of our cultural issues right now, not, you know, are rooted in porn. I mean, there isn't very many stories that you hear, whether it's heterosexual, homosexual, it doesn't really matter what story it is. Porn's almost always somewhere in that person's early childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, and I've referenced this study of 11,000 porn users in my book. But there was a direct correlation between the frequency of porn use and those who identify as bisexual.
Wow.
So those who watch porn weekly, 13% identify as bisexual. Those who watch porn daily, 20%. Those who watch porn multiple times a day, 27% are bisexual. And I'll just say this real quick, that this is important for your listeners to understand, that when a person reaches a point of tolerance with drugs or alcohol, they need more to get the same high.
Yep.
But with porn or sex, you don't just need more, you need different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the different is a little more deviant,
a
little more taboo, a little more forbidden.
Yeah.
And so to your point, Cole, I absolutely agree that what we're seeing today is the natural escalation of a porn appetite.
Man, okay, so can we just go for it right away? Let's talk about the church here, Ted. You know, how widespread is this in the church from your view? Obviously if you're creating content, freedom groups, which again, we're going to get into what this looks like here in a minute, but this isn't an outside of the church thing. This is really taking hold of culture altogether. From your view, how widespread is this even in the kingdom?
Yeah, well, the Barna Group told us in 2016 that 2 out of 3 men in the church watch porn at least monthly.
Wow.
But the younger the age group, the bigger that percentage gets. The Freedom Fight did a study in 2019 of practicing Christian college students. So these weren't just students who claimed to be Christian.
Yeah.
These were students who said their faith in Jesus Christ was
They're
very
engaged.
important.
Yeah.
They're growing. They're plugged into a campus ministry, and almost half of the group that we surveyed were leaders in their campus ministry.
Wow.
So these are our future Christian leaders.
Yeah.
Of this group, 89% of the men said they'd watched porn in the last 12 months.
Wow.
63% said they were watching porn at least weekly or more.
Wow.
1 in 4 of these men were watching porn at least daily. 51% of these growing Christian college students said they were addicted to porn. And it's not just a guy's problem. 24% of the girls, of the growing Christian college women, 1 in 4 were watching porn monthly or more. And so it's a massive issue in the church, particularly for this younger generation. And
okay, so let me ask you this, Ted, to play the other side of it, that people would say is, well, what's the big deal? Like, who are they hurting? What are they hurting? Why does that really matter? What's the impact on their life? Like, why is the church all hung up on this issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one, I would say, as a follower of Christ, obviously he commanded us, against fleshly lust, and visual lust specifically.
Yep.
But let me give you a couple of things. One, in 1 Peter 2:11, Peter says, abstain from fleshly lust, which wage war against the soul.
Yep.
So you think about, of all the imagery God could have given to describe how fleshly lust, like pornography, impacts a person, he says it wages war against the soul, the deepest part of who we are. Well, there's a sociology professor at OU that did a 6-year study of 3,000 people, and he looked at the impact of porn. And this is a peer-reviewed study, but one of the ways that, he basically said, man, porn is waging war on multiple fronts. One is a person's spiritual growth. This professor said that there was a direct correlation that any porn use is associated with declines in religious commitment and behavior, like attending services and prayer, and an increase in religious doubts. So think about it for a minute. If you wanted Christians to be less committed to reading their Bible, praying, going to church, and you wanted them to doubt more, get them to watch porn.
Wow.
So it's waging war against the soul. It's also waging war against marriages. Again, the same study, he found that if either the husband or wife started watching pornography, that couple was 2 to 3 times more likely to divorce in the next 2 years than the porn-free couple.
Wow.
Which is massive when you think of, the collateral damage.
Yeah.
I'll just give you one more quickly that he also found is there was a direct correlation between the frequency of porn use and people not serving in their churches. And so he said, if somebody's not watching porn, there was a 1 in 3 probability that that person would serve in the church.
Wow.
If they started watching porn monthly, it dropped from 1 in 3 to 1 in 10.
Wow.
If they started watching porn weekly, it dropped to 1 in 20. We have an enemy that's using pornography to reach into Christian homes and churches and capture the hearts and minds of a generation. And it's sidelining people. It's destroying marriages. And so, again, the impact, and we could talk about, how it's impacting people's sex life, their marriage, their enjoyment of sex, all of that. But those are a few of the reasons that I would, warn somebody that, hey, porn is having a much bigger impact on your life than you think.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just heartbreaking. I'm just thinking of everybody listening, like, take a minute to even just like take a deep breath. Like, all of the statistics, it's easy sometimes to think of it. Then I don't know, sometimes my brain goes to like thinking about science, like, oh, statistics, science. But I'm like, these lives, these homes, like, you can think, I think everybody listening, if it's not affected you personally, it's affected somebody you absolutely love, and the destruction that is coming from this. So I'm so thankful, Ted, that you pointed out that verse of it's waging war on our souls. And so many of us as believers, I think I've seen a level in our generation of desensitization to it, of just accepting it as normal. Like, well, yeah, everybody like has a porn struggle or a past in porn, or even like after a kid sees it, like, oh, well, we're just glad he stopped. But I'm like, what do we do to go after to make sure that, because it doesn't just stop, right? Like the destruction that has happened there. So would you speak to, and obviously that's what you've created with the Freedom Fight of, wow, when we know somebody, instead of just thinking, oh, like, I'll pray for you, or I'll try to keep you accountable and ask you from time to time, are you still struggling? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean? How do we actually, as believers who maybe are already free or never have struggled, how do we come around and support those in our lives that they've been in this war? How do we battle for them and with them?
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah, that really is. And because it's really, an incredible opportunity to take the truth of God and apply it in their heart and life at a deeper level than it's been before. And so it really, our vision, was really birthed out of a necessity. We were trying to help people, and man, our old, methods of helping people weren't working anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
And just because the amount of pornography, going from, the dial-up porn to the porn that we had today, the high-speed internet,
the sheer quantity and variety has changed. What you can get in a short amount of time,
and it's in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the adolescent brain is much more susceptible to addictive substances like porn. This is why we have laws in place to keep addictive substances away from the adolescent brain, because the adolescent brain is just much more, moldable, easily shaped, kind of like wet cement.
Yep.
And so when somebody gets hooked on an addictive substance as an adolescent, the chance that it becomes a lifelong struggle go way up. And so this is why, parents need to have a sense of urgency. This is why, when I talk to, high school students or college students, there needs to be a sense of urgency, because, man, the porn pathways go very deep in the adolescent brain. And so, but Caitlin, to get back to answering your question, letting people know, and that was the whole reason we created the Freedom Fight, is that there's a pathway that leads to freedom.
Wow.
Because before it was, hey, just quit that, or hey, just memorize this verse, or hey, let me pray for you. But now there's actually a pathway that you can follow to find freedom, and really base that pathway on when the Apostle Paul was addressing the church at Ephesus, which was a very hypersexualized culture in first century Rome. And when he addressed this group of Christians that were struggling with bondage to sex, man, he laid out a pathway. He didn't get Christian cliches like, hey, just love Jesus more and quit. It was very specific and practical steps, and really that's what we base our program on as well.
Okay, so even before we get into that part, I'd like you to even help us identify for a second, like, how does someone figure out, hey, am I addicted, or am I developing an addiction? How do you know, or how is an addiction developed? How do they know if they're trying to self-assess where they're at right now? What is the self-assessment that they're doing to figure out how an addiction starts or where they're at in that struggle?
Yeah. Well, and I would say this, we actually have a clinical tool on our website called the Sexual Addiction Screening Test. It takes less than 5 minutes, 20 questions. but that would be a clinical,
awesome.
Clinical test. But, it's important for a person because especially as believers, when we're watching, when a person watches porn, they learn to deny, minimize, and rationalize for so long that they're not that objective typically.
Yeah, it's true.
But addiction experts tell us that an addiction goes to a whole new level of depth when somebody starts using their addictive substance as a way to medicate or numb negative emotions. And so, for instance,
okay,
if a person starts using porn to medicate the stress in their life, and they do that repeatedly, then the next time they're stressed, their brain actually releases dopamine to start the craving.
Wow.
Because the brain goes into relief mode. Hey,
Yeah.
I know where we can go to feel a whole lot better. And
Yep.
so a lot of guys will think, man, this huge urge to use porn hits them out of nowhere. But usually when we go back and look at it, it's an emotional trigger that started the process. And so
Really good.
and so it's important for people to realize that, because we probably have all experienced coping eating, like, hey, we're anxious or nervous. Well, multiply that by 10 or 20 and you begin to really understand addiction, because hey, when that negative emotion hits, loneliness,
Yeah.
or whatever it is
Yep.
that I've been medicating, my brain releases dopamine to start the craving that, oh, this
Yep.
is what brings relief.
Yeah.
And so it becomes because it happens at the subconscious level.
Yeah.
A lot of people have no idea what's going on. They're just,
Yep.
they're being led by, their emotions. And so when that happens, man, that addiction just goes to a whole new level.
Yeah. Now, would you say would you identify that as maybe the root, or what would the root be? One of the things we say a lot is porn's not the problem. There's a different problem. And whether that's the exact right language or not, would love for you to, are you starting to hint on identifying the root there, or give us a little bit of that,
Yeah.
how someone figures out, hey, what's my root core issue? If porn's not the issue, what is the issue? How do they figure that out?
Yeah. Well, in my book, we talk about there's 6 roots of an addiction and I can run through them real quick, but the sexualized society, just access because it's everywhere, man, that's a huge root.
Yep.
The addicted brain, understanding the brain science of addiction, and man, how our brains lock us into bondage. That's a huge part of this root. Negative emotions, that I just mentioned, is a huge root. People begin to medicate their negative emotions. Isolation. A porn or a sex addiction is classified as an intimacy disorder. And I'll say this real quick while we're on this one, because I think this will be interesting to your listeners and will also help us understand what makes pornography a unique in the area of addictions is it provides a fake intimacy.
Which nothing else does that.
Nothing else does that. And so the fake intimacy is, man, it's a very powerful thing. We know that oxytocin is the bonding chemical.
Good.
And when a person has skin-to-skin contact, when a couple makes love, when there's climax, there's a massive amount of oxytocin release, because this was God's idea to cause bonding between a husband and wife. Well, think about it. When there's porn, there's masturbation, there's climax, that there's a bonding that takes place between the person and the images or the sex act or the actors or actresses in the video. And so there is actually this connection, this emotional bonding that takes place. Therapists actually call it dating porn.
Wow.
Because there's this emotional connection. And so as you think about idols, as far as idols go, porn is hard to beat in that it numbs out your negative emotions. It gives you this fake intimacy. Man, it gives you this rush of dopamine. It's very easy to contain, and man, this is why it's become so addictive. But let me continue my list. So isolation is the fourth root. Shame. Many sex addiction therapists would say shame is the biggest of the drivers, and then the sixth one is trauma.
Oh yeah.
And so it's important for when people start medicating their negative emotions, usually those negative emotions are connected to shame, could be connected to a deeper trauma.
Yep.
But that's kind of the, how those are related.
All right, Ted. So if I'm watching right now or listening, I'm struggling with porn, I imagine I am sitting here saying, okay, Ted, what do I do? How do I get out of this? Like, tell us what you guys have built, because, and this is why we really have had you on, because we want to get this resource to people.
Yeah.
Would love for you to now. So for the person that's listening, they're like, man, yes, it is an addiction. I'm using it to medicate. It's because of trauma. Like maybe they just have already become more self-aware in the last 5 minutes than they were before. What's the next step, and how does what you guys do walk them into freedom?
Yeah, so we created on our website, thefreedomfight.org. We have a 6-month, so it takes about 6 months to go through because it takes a while to renew your mind.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
We encourage people, when they go through the program, it's a 50 to 60 videos that are 5 to 8 minutes each that unpack principles of recovery. And as people go through it, there's, the program is free. You can get a study guide, fill in the blanks. There's a Bible study with each lesson that just kind of drives home the biblical principle. But then, on our app, so you can get the whole program through our app or website, but we created the app for the check-in feature.
Yeah.
Because on a daily basis, you check in and you send your check-in to an accountability partner or a small group. And so that it makes it really powerful because negative emotions are what people are medicating, and that's what's connected to the shame and the trauma. Growing in self-awareness, emotional intelligence is a must.
Big.
We've actually had groups of women use our app, that check-in feature for eating disorders, because the triggers are the same.
Yeah, sure.
Hey,
Yep.
And so really helping
Yeah.
people. And so having that app, and we actually have a feature called I'm Triggered. When you hit that one button, it automatically sends an alert to your accountability partner. So, man, they can call you, they can reach out. Hey, man, I'm praying for you. And so all of a sudden, a person can break isolation and reach out for help with just a click. And so the program, basically helps people walk through, hey, what are the different practices that I need to build into my lifestyle, not just to overcome, an addiction to porn, but to grow deeper in my new life in Christ. And so, because those two things in Ephesians go hand in hand. As Paul was telling this group of believers stuck in sexual sin, the pathway he gave them was also the pathway to living out of your identity in Christ at the fullest level. And so that's one of the things that we talk about is, hey, this isn't just from Paul's perspective, it wasn't just a problem to solve in the church, but it was an incredible opportunity for deep discipleship. And that's exactly what we have seen, because people aren't just finding freedom, but man, they're growing in who they are in Christ at a whole new level. And it's been incredible to see.
Ted, I mean,
I'm crying over here because I just want to, everybody listening, we're going to stop for a second and just say thank you to Ted and his wife and his team that have given your lives to this. Because as we've been in ministry now for, I think, almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years,
we've been with young people, old people, married people, parenting where their kids find porn. I'm like, you've given your life to and created the resource that everybody in a sense didn't know how to touch it, what to touch, like where to start, overwhelmed. The fact that you created the app too, I feel so thankful for that, because knowing this generation, like they need something like that. Because, we've told them like, hey, text somebody, but you're like, you literally have created the exact tool they need when they probably feel like they don't have the words to just click like, I am triggered. It goes out to their support. Like it just, it felt so powerful to hear that. So we're thankful for you. And I'm sure so many listeners that it hits deep for everybody.
Yeah.
Like Cole and I, neither of us have seen porn, had that personal experience, but I am thinking of so many people in my life right now that would benefit from the tools and the resources you've created. So thankful to hear this and excited to share it more and more and more.
So just say the website one more time, Ted. I would love for, we're going to put it in the show notes, but just say it. So we want if you're listening, go there. Whether you need this but I guarantee you at least know somebody that needs this. So go find out what they're doing and what this resource is about. What's the site again, Ted?
thefreedomfight.org.
Great.
Yeah.
And then what's the app? How do they find the app?
It's the Freedom Fight. So the App Store, the Google platform, either one. It's on both.
And how do you fund this, Ted? How do you guys do this for free?
Well, we raised a lot of money, and so that's one of the things that we're in the process. So I've recruited a board about 2 years ago as I kind of started getting overwhelmed of raising the money on my own, and so but we're in the process of developing a plan to become more self-sustaining. So.
Where do people go right now to donate? If people want to donate right now,
we can add the donate button to our show notes. Let's do it.
Yeah. So it's on the Freedom Fight, and we have a pay it forward model, and our model is, hey, when you find freedom, man, pay it forward for that next person. So that's amazing. Kind of the vision.
So people that are listening and watching, go donate to this ministry. Help fund freedom. Go give a sacrificial gift to these guys, because it is good soil and it is well worth it.
It is. Okay, and I want to close with one question. In your book, you cite an expert that says there's 10% of people that actually seek help. And so what is it that's keeping the rest of us from seeking help? Because I feel like that's the perfect way to end of somebody who's listening to this whole thing. Okay, I know I should. What is it that kind of pushes them over the edge to actually do what they need to do to find freedom?
Well, and that's a great question, because, the churches that, have programs, only 7% of churches, according to one survey, have a program to help people, but the way it's set up is we ask people if they want to come to, to a church program. Think about what we're asking them to do. They have to identify publicly as somebody addicted to porn.
Yeah, right.
So that was one of the reasons that we created the app and the website, is helping people begin to grow, begin to get hope, because nobody gets free on their own. And we actually coach them up on how to get an accountability partner.
It's amazing.
So, but shame is one of the things that makes this such a difficult topic to address, because I remember at our church a few years ago, the pastor was like, "Hey, we got this program to help you find freedom. We got some groups. Sign up at the booth in the back." It's like nobody's going to the booth in the back because of shame. And so that was one of the reasons we wanted to put all of this online. And, because what we found is people start finding freedom and the shame begins to diminish, that they're much more able to step out and publicly, confess and, get help.
It's amazing. Ted, thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate you joining us. Thanks for what you guys are doing. Man, we're going to tell so many people about you guys.
The Freedom Fight. Yes. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more and check out all of our awesome content, be sure to head to our website at moralrevolution.com and our socials, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. But before you leave, don't forget to like, review, subscribe, all of the things. We want you guys to come back and join us. We enjoyed having you. See you next time.